Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Character Building. This week and for the next few weeks, I've decided we're going to go through a single character design from beginning to end. And the character I've decided to work with is one I've had in the back of my mind for a while now. It's taken a few different iterations, and it may end up being a completely different character from the one it started out as a few years ago. So basically, the concept here was a fawn-type character. But instead of a goat half at the bottom, it's going to be an ostrich half. And I thought it was an interesting take on it as well. And I like to take things that exist before and reimagine them using different sources of inspiration. So in this case, like I said, we have the ostrich half in the bottom and the human half on top. And she's going to be a runner. I figured that would be a pretty adept thing for her to be, given the circumstances. It may almost be a little cliche, but not quite expected either. So, in any case, as you can see here, I'm working through with a very broad brush, as you've seen me use in other videos. Starting off very loose and not very defined yet, kind of almost using like a hazy cloud. Just focusing on proportions and posing. I am using reference for this. The references you cannot see at the moment because they are off screen. I'm using a different monitor for that, and I only recorded the part I'm working on. But if you were to see the whole thing, I have a picture of a runner for the pose. I have a picture of another picture with an outfit that I liked for the character. It was a sweat jacket with a hood, or a hoodie, and running shorts. So that was for the costume. And then, of course, I have, the picture of ostrich anatomy references, so I can get an idea of picturing that in my head as well. So I have something, accurate to work from. That's a good reference and source of inspiration that way, too. So incorporating all of those things together is what informed that cloud-like shape. And as you can see now, I've moved on to the next stage where I've taken the first layer and toned it down. And now I'm building on top of that and clarifying a little bit more, bringing out the form some more. This whole thing I'm doing today is actually, it's not going to be the final design. This is a starting point. The actual design itself is going to be finished probably over the next few weeks. And but once we're done, we'll have moved from this first concept drawing to a full set of sheets that for construction. So model sheets, construction sheets, showing all the kind of different notes that will be entailed with having to recreate the character for either animation or for comics or any other kind of purpose that you can have for this kind of character. And that could be used by other people too if they were to try and reconstruct the character, instead of having to guess. You want it to be as defined as possible in all ways. So that's what we're going for in the end. But for now, this is just a concept sketch. And this sketch took about an hour to complete in real time. Again, not working from any presets. Keep experimenting around, changing poses here and there slightly, fixing things, adjusting for perspective. Working on the jacket there now. The sweat jacket. And kind of this inspiration for this week's this whole series I'm going to be doing upcoming is the fact that I've seen a lot of people try and do model sheets in their own, and I used to do this same thing. I didn't publish any of them because they didn't turn out that good, but a lot of other people do it themselves, and I noticed that after learning a little bit more about what the process is and what an actual reference sheet professional one looks like, it's not what people were doing. So I figured whatever I had learned, and I've learned this again from Mike Matezzi's classes, what goes into a character design model sheet, and so I'm going to make it emulate as much as possible those professional design concepts and those professional layouts that are used to recreate and stay on model over and over again. So I've kind of done a fairly generic kind of hairstyle, very kind of short, but pointed. And when I don't have anything, when I'm not using reference, like for the hair, for example, I am filling in something that is, I'm sure, is at least got some forceful shape to it, and that can be defined as having volume. And it's, again, using some principles of asymmetry. So things are, so one curve is going to be slightly pushed out further than another. Things are not going to be as parallel. Well, the face is going to be parallel, obviously, in perspective, but the shapes that define organic hair shapes or body shapes and that kind of thing, if I don't have a reference for it specifically, I'm just going to make sure that it looks dynamic and aesthetically pleasing using those same principles. So, nailing down the structure of the face here. And it helps also, and I may have mentioned this in other times, but rotating your canvas around and flipping it, obviously. Anything that changes your perspective of what you're drawing back and forth every now and then, the more you do it, the easier it is to do it, the better, because then you can really get a handle. Like, man, that was way off. That perspective is way off. The lines aren't matching up. But you don't necessarily notice those things if you've been staring at it for one way for too long. So it's always a good idea to turn things around, get a new perspective on it. So I'm on my third layer now. I've worked on the second layer. It's gotten a little bit more precise. I'm actually getting into the part where I'm working on clothing, adding some details and wrinkles into the clothes, and really nailing down some of those shapes, clarifying. Every pass I take at it brings me a little close to a more conceptual, volumetric understanding of the character I'm trying to get to. You start with a very loose cloud and you end up with something that has solid form to it. It's almost kind of like magic in that respect. It's very neat. You're kind of taking a cloud and making something material out of it. See, I'm even adding the details to the legs now, as ostriches have that unique pattern on the tops of their feet. I still have trouble with the expression on the smiles and the mouths every now and then. So keep going over it until you get it right. Learn from it and keep moving. I want a kind of counterpostal, I think this word is counterpostal pose. So more of the weight being on one foot than the other, which has an effect on the posture, which I tried to capture as well. Something that was on my mind. See, I'm refining I'm actually pushing the shape of the tail out a little bit more there. You can see I've put a more sharp point to it a little bit, whereas before it was more graceful before. But I really want to add that dynamism to it because I don't have a really reference much for the tail so much. So what I ended up doing there is just pushing the make the shape more dynamic. And there we go. That's my finished concept drawing for the first week. Like I said, we will be doing this for the next few weeks. Next week, I have already a video recorded. I'd have to lay over my own comments on top of it, but it'll be talking about the working with construction drawings, breaking things down and refining your design so that it can be reconstructed, from a reference. And that's about all for this week. So we have our concept design, and I will see you next week. If you like this video and want to see more, click subscribe. Want to tell me what to draw? You can. Click on the link to my Patreon page.